All right, thank you, Rob. All right, we're going to go to a panel. And joining me on stage is a panel full of diverse perspectives and backgrounds. We have a small business owner, a farmer, a former mayor, and a physician. 2 representatives and 2 senators, 2 Republicans and 2 Democrats. One thing they all have in common, a dedication to serving Oregonians. At first, I'd like to welcome to the stage Senator Dick Anderson, former mayor of Lincoln City. We're excited to hear from Senator Anderson's perspectives on housing policy and recommendations. Next, please welcome Representative Janelle Bynum from Happy Valley, where she owns and operates 4 restaurants in her community. She will bring knowledge and experience on semiconductor advancement to the day. Number 3, please welcome Representative Mark Owens, a farmer and a small business owner from Crane in Eastern Oregon. We look forward to his perspective on the importance of a strong water policy and how we can improve Oregon. And last but not least, please welcome Senator Elizabeth Steiner, physician of a family medicine at OHSU and co-chair of the Ways and Means Committee from Washington County. We look forward to her perspective on long-term fiscal planning. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for being here. It's great to have everybody on stage. So let's see here. Mr. Anderson, let's start with you. Let's talk about housing. Why do you think that policy issue is so important? And what do you hope the legislature, through bipartisan action, will accomplish?
Thank you. And I think that fits very well into topics today. Let's talk about economic development. Housing is economic development. When you think of the jobs created by building more production, more units, by the materials that are needed to actually construct units, the occupants of these units end up paying rent, mortgage payments, buying services in the community, being available for the workforce locally. These all add and a key component to economic development. So that's the premise of housing for me, is it's a key linchpin in economic development. The other thing I would put to answer the question, we for decades have talked about the housing crisis in Oregon, but yet it doesn't feel to me like we've done things about it, but we've not treated it as a real crisis, an emergency, taking the kind of steps that are needed to make a difference. And I think that's one of the things that the new legislature, next biennium, you'll see a lot more focus, one on the actual production of units. And that's not to say we haven't done a lot with housing, past legislatures, because in fact we have. We've put a lot of money into subsidized housing. We've done studies galore. We've funded studies for communities to look at needs analysis, production strategies, and whatnot. But at the end of the day, we still have a crisis. So one of the things that I think over the last from the last session, a bunch of us have started talking about the barriers to making that happen. And what we've found is, quite frankly, time is money. And a focus needs to be on workforce housing. Those people in workforce housing, just for information, is roughly housing units that go 80 to 20% of median income. So that's your police officers, that's your hospital workers, that's your city workforce and employees, and many more. But they've not been able to find housing in their communities that they can either have available or afford. And that's a component that I think the focus now is on and will be. Not to say we've given up or even stopped doing stuff for affordable housing, but this is a component. And anything below market rate housing, which workforce is and would be, needs a subsidy, quite frankly, but maybe it's not money subsidy. So we start looking at how we process and have processed permits. So maybe that's one of the things that we can do, because time is money. If you can shorten down the time, it actually turns into money and affordability. Same thing with maybe deferring costs. Not give up, but when they actually get paid by a developer or a builder, it saves interest from the builder itself, and that saves money. So I think one of the realization in this market segment of workforce housing, you're going to find we relook at process of how production is actually done in Oregon for a change. So I applaud those efforts that have come before us. I think now's the time to get done with new production, increasing the availability. There's no answer there that we no dispute. We need more housing units to make a difference. So I think, as I've indicated, it's not a partisan topic. It really is finally, people are excited about this, willing to do something about this, and I think you'll see a suite of bills that are aimed at production. It's going to make some people uncomfortable because we're going to stretch the limits of thinking a little bit and come out of the norm, quite frankly, of how we've done things before, because doing stuff the same old way, hasn't produced any units. And there is quite a huge group of people in the legislature now that see that need and willing to, make a difference.
Fantastic, thank you. Senator Anderson, thank you. Representative Bynum, your topic is semiconductors. Same two questions.
All right,
Take it away.
semiconductors. So I think we've heard a lot about semiconductors today, and I don't think I need to sell you on the prospect of such an exciting venture. But I will share with you why I am so passionate about this and why we have to make progress on it. So when I was in 6th grade, I entered a Pathways program, and I knew I wanted to become an engineer, like 11, 12 years old. I joined the math team. I got a scholarship. Boeing, if Boeing is here today, thank you for investing in a kid like me. I graduated from an HBCU with my electrical engineering degree, and I went to General Motors to become an automotive engineer. And September 11th happened, and I was in Taiwan inspecting motors and controllers on a line in Taiwan, in Taipei. And life changed. That job changed. And so I came back home. We were in the Detroit area at the time. And my husband and I said, okay, the world is changing. What are we going to do? So we decided whether we would go back home to my home in Washington, D.C., or we would come back home here to his home in Oregon. And we chose Oregon because it had the Silicon Forest. But this was 2002. And when we got here, there was nothing for me. I had an engineering degree. I had an MBA from a top university, Michigan, go blue. I was this young, optimistic woman with the world right before me and a career that I knew would always be there for me, and it wasn't. Somebody dropped the ball. And so today, fast forward 20 years, I am determined not to drop that ball again on Oregon's youth. I am determined. I watched my daughter play basketball yesterday, and she was coming down the court like a freight train. And I said, where did she get that from? And I was like, oh, she got it from her mama. And so that is what this personally means to me. It means that kids all around Oregon, it means families can enjoy family wage jobs. We can have safe and secure communities because people have some hope. And selling you on hope is not a soft thing. Selling you on having communities that are strong and people have something to look forward to, that is not a soft thing. But for those of you for whom social justice, that's like your thing, I will tell you there is no better form of social justice than economic justice. There is no better form. The other point I wanted to underscore in answering this question is just to remind us that government does not make money. Businesses make money. Enterprises make money. If we want to fund the good things that we do here in the state of Oregon, we have to be business focused, business friendly. We must protect our workers. And there must be shared prosperity. So I expect that as we put forth this proposal in the legislature, that it will be something that will be shared by all. Diverse communities must participate in this process, and I encourage my colleagues to join me in that, as well as it must be a bipartisan effort. So that is what we're looking forward to. We've got the Small Business and Economic Development Committee in the House taking shape now. I encourage you to ask your legislators to join that committee, to self-select and ask to be on that. And I also encourage you to make sure that your legislators know that you have businesses in your community that want to participate on the semiconductor proposal. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Representative Bynum. Representative Owens, your topic is one that's near and dear to my heart, and that's water.
Water. Bear with me. I was taught that you need to stand when you talk to a group of people, so excuse me. Water. To answer the first question, why is water important to all of us? We need it for housing. We need it for semiconductors. We need a stable, secure water future for all. Without that, a lot of things collapse. I'm a first-generation farmer for Harmony Basin. I get to represent House District 60, which is 37% of the state of Oregon. I represent more farmers and ranchers than any other House member in the state. I say that to give you a little perspective of my comments. The first thing I'd like to leave with you is priority number one. Water is a bipartisan issue. It should not and will not be a partisan issue if I have anything to say about it. I've had the privilege of working with Representative Helm and Representative Reardon for the last 5 years, 3 of those years as a state legislator. The last summer, Ken and I spent the whole summer traveling around to different parts of the state, listening, learning, starting to share some of our thoughts and ideas. That's what I'm here to talk about. First of all, what we're doing in the 17 western states, what we're doing in Oregon, and water is not working. Look at the Colorado Basin. You've all seen the stories of Lake Mead, Lake Powell. They're at critical low levels. 40 million people depend on that water for potable water. 400 million people depend on that for food. Oregon is a microcosm of what is happening across the West. Look at Klamath. Farmers, fish, tribes, potable wells. Look at Jefferson County. Look at Harney Basin. Look at the Warm Springs Reservation. What we're doing is not working. Our first shared priority would be responsible water accounting, where we have the Water Resource Department come together and give us a simple analysis on the information they have. What is the water balance? What comes in, what goes out, what's available, compared to what's been appropriated. That'll start to paint a picture. Of that picture, we'll ask the Water Resource Department, or we'll force the Water Resource Department. Sorry, hopefully the governor agrees with me. We will work with those communities to figure out what is your water future? How do we get sustainable water management plans? How do we plan for fish, farming, tribes? We got to do it all. Responsible water accounting will help us do that. Secondly, we're looking at federal funding mechanisms in order to make sure small communities are ready for the money that's coming in from the federal government. We need to be prepared. In fact, we might be late. We're going to look at drought package, making sure that we, in the light of a water-constrained environment, it's not drought anymore, ladies and gentlemen. We're here. I'll just summarize by saying we stand ready to work with everybody in this room on water. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Owens. Senator Steiner.
Sure.
Last but not least, your topic is long-term budgeting.
It is. And I know we're almost out of time, so I'll try to be concise. Representative Bynum told a story about how she ended up doing some of this work. I'll just say that one of my surprises coming into the legislature is it turns out I'm a real budget geek. That was not what I expected to do, but it turns out that that's what I love doing. And why? Because you deserve to know that your tax dollars, whether those are business taxes or personal taxes, are being spent in the ways that maximize benefit to as many Oregonians as possible. Oregon's budgeting system is really strong, and my colleague and friend, Speaker Rayfield, with whom I co-chaired budget committees for 5 years, including full, mentioned that Oregon's reserves are some of the strongest in the nation, and that's because he and I have always shared that value that we need to be planning for the future. Now, the problem is that what we don't yet have in Oregon is a way to demonstrate that if you make an investment here, here are the long-term trajectories in terms of costs and revenues for the state. For example, if we invest in tools that we know, evidence-based tools, and as a physician, that's certainly what I've always focused on in my practice, if we invest in evidence-based policies to improve our high school graduation rate, we will do several things. The first is we know that graduating high school on time makes it more likely you go into higher education, makes it more likely that you'll earn a family wage job, makes it more likely you can enter a skilled trade or a profession that will benefit you, and therefore you will be a tax-paying Oregonian, and our revenues will increase. Conversely, we know that not graduating high school on time dramatically increases your likelihood of ending up in the criminal justice system, thus incurring an enormous cost to the state. So what we need is a tool where we can actually model that if we invest here, this is what our budget's going to look like, not just in this biennium, not in the next biennium, but 2, 3, 4 biennia down the road. And I'm very grateful to the folks at Oregon Business Council and Echo Northwest who've been working on this model for quite some time. So I am very excited that I'm starting to work with a variety of groups, and in particular, the Office of Economic Analysis, the Chief Financial Office in the Department of Administrative Services, Legislative Revenue, Legislative Fiscal, to pull together a group to see if we can do a pilot project to put together a solid modeling process that we can use, especially during the long legislative sessions, so that we can say, okay, we have limited resources, let's invest here, and let's see what that looks like for our long-term prospects as a state economically. And these are the kinds of tools that we can use to make sure that we're investing your tax dollars in the way that benefits the most people and makes this a place where my grandchildren and my great-grandchildren will be born and raised and be able to thrive as we want every Oregonian today to thrive. So I hope that was brief enough, but I wanted to explain the prospect.
Outstanding. I want to thank each of our panel representatives, a bipartisan group. Thank you, everybody.
There we go, that way.